Oh, and we're live.
Hey.
Hey guys, this is Mark Stein of creditpathway.com speaking with David Snyder of NLP Power. Welcome, David.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So let's get right to it. I know you like to get right down to it. So as you are a master of NLP and hypnotic sales persuasion and everything in and around this space, let's talk about 2016 because I think that's a great starting point to move our conversation into really this idea and this general umbrella of sales influence. And let's talk about, we had the last presidency and, certainly the current and future presidency might very well be affected by someone who happens to be very powerful and very adept at sales influence and persuasion skills as a whole.
Okay, so you actually want me to answer a question there?
I do.
What exactly is the question?
Well, it's more of a talking point as to Donald Trump and how he's really just caught fire in terms of captivating an audience, and when we look at some of the massive mass persuaders out there. We're not going to name names, but people can come up with their own name as they imagine their experience and the experience that impacted them. What I really want to talk about is the power of sales in terms of how it affects the impact on the viewer or listener.
Well, first and foremost, you got to think about that word sales. I don't know if you can turn your speaker down because I'm coming through the headphones, which means it's probably going to impact your viewers' ability to listen. First of all, we use the word sales. We got to watch out when we start to use words like sales and manipulation and persuasion, because with every word that we use, we're dealing with three potential definitions, each of which have a direct impact on our thinking. The first is the dictionary definition. We all can go to a dictionary, we can look up selling, or we can look up persuasion, or we can look up manipulation. And if you look at them, the definitions aren't all that different, especially between persuasion and manipulation. Then you have what we commonly think of as, or we think of as the common usage of a word, as opposed to its dictionary definition, right? People who say, that's sick, or that's cool. Well, obviously, cool is slang, so there's a common slang term to it, but there's also a dictionary definition, and we understand that. But there's another level to our language that we need to understand, and it's the most powerful, but it's the most subtle, and that is what I call the meta message. When I say words like selling, or manipulation, or persuasion, there's a feeling that you get in your body when you hear that word, and especially true depending on what context I use it in. But you have to remember that human beings are not logical, data-driven creatures. They're feeling-driven creatures. And if you change the feelings in a human being's body, you change that human being's personality in that moment, and as a result of that feeling change, how they sort and relate to the information presented to them changes. So if you use a word like selling, well, we have a certain energy and a certain set of associations we bring to bear on the discussion. You could say Donald Trump's selling as opposed to Donald Trump's manipulation, as opposed to Donald Trump's persuasion, right? Each of them has similarities, but there's a different feel to each of those. So and even though it's not directly related, I think we need to understand when we communicate what is the feeling that a particular word generates in us. Because if it generates a certain feeling in us, there's a high, in spite of what we consciously mean, there's a high probability it will generate a similar feeling in somebody else. Now, in terms of what Trump is doing, again, Trump is a master of persuasion and communication. How could he? He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal decades ago, and you can't make deals without understanding how to understand people. Understand what motivates them, understand how to guide their perspectives, how to clear the blockages out of the way. But what Trump is doing, from the limited samples I've seen, is he's speaking to the part of the human body that is reptilian. He's speaking to the part of us that is tired of being pushed around, feels our homes and its safety is being threatened, doesn't want to be restrained, doesn't want to be bound, wants to be the top dog. You know, that's all a reptilian response. You have three brains. You have your paleocortex. Wrapped around that is your mammalian brain, which is your emotional brain, or your hypothalamus. Is that what I'm thinking of? Limbic system, sorry, not hypothalamus, limbic system. And then around that you have the neocortex, which is the part of you that thinks in data, facts, and figures. It's also the least informed and the last to know anything. And the only conclusions it makes is based on the information that the other two levels give it and warp it. So when Donald Trump gets up there and he starts talking about making America great again and talking about people invading us and doing these kinds of things, he's activating a very, very primal set of drives within us, drives we can't turn off. And when he speaks to that level, every level of the person's neurology has to pay attention, because if it threatens your survival, it threatens everything else, and the meat, more than anything else, is programmed to survive. All political correctness aside, you start speaking you start speaking lizard, as I like to call it. It doesn't matter what your limbic system wants. It doesn't matter what your neocortex wants. And the interesting part is when people try to use data and facts and figures to challenge a reptilian response, reptile doesn't like to think. Reptile digs its heels in and actually becomes more convinced of itself, because it doesn't like its freedom being impinged upon. It doesn't like its sense of autonomy being taken away. Right? So if you have an opposing viewpoint to the reptile response you're generating, it will tend to lock those feelings and that rationale in. Fastest way to keep somebody actually locked into their point of view, even if you've beaten them down with the facts, is to actually fight their point of view. Does that help?
Yeah, that's exactly how I wanted to frame and set up this conversation. And really, as we move along, what I want the viewer to pay attention to and focus in on is this idea and this concept that influence is happening, and you would agree with me about this, I would think. Influence is happening, and you are either at cause or effect. And whether we think it's good or bad or want to put a pejorative upon it, it's something that you need to be aware of, because if you're not aware of, you are certainly at its mercy. So let's talk about that as we move along into internet marketing. And one of your many topics of interest, and as you're one of the Renaissance people that I know, and you're a ninth degree black belt, and you have certainly a whole slew of interests, and a lot of these items you're one of the best at. That being said, internet marketing. So let's talk about internet marketing and how someone, even if they're starting their business out, because at Credit Pathway we deal with a lot of startups, a lot of new businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs. And after we fund them, we want to point them in the direction of what steps can they take today, next week, in the immediate future to get their business marketed in the right direction on the internet.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to understand that there are, for years I was actually very, very active with the San Diego Internet Marketing Meetup out here. It was probably the largest internet marketing meetup in San Diego. And I haven't been active with them now for 2 or 3 years, but they do really good stuff out here. But for 3 or 4 years, I was helping a lot of people in the same exact boat, guiding them through what I learned through getting my teeth bashed in by Google and all the AdWords and all the Google slaps and things like that. Back in the Wild West days of the internet marketing, where you could buy, Google AdWords for 5 to 10 cents a click, right? And send it to a page that was only marginally related to what you were actually selling or promoting. But one of the things that I think is relevant at a very nuts and bolts grassroots level is deciding what kind of a marketer you are. And what I mean by that is I've discovered that there are basically 2 categories of marketer. There's what I call the passionate enthusiast and the passionate marketer. Now, a passionate enthusiast has something that they love to do, something that they think they can make money at. And they're going to go out and they're going to create a business and learn marketing to promote that thing, that passion that they have. And that's okay. That would be me, honestly. But then there, of course, is the passionate marketer. And there's somebody who's in love with the process of marketing. They don't really care, to a certain degree, what the product is, as long as, hopefully, it's a good product and it's something that people want, that they can apply their marketing passion to. Over the years, I've become a little bit of both, because my field is human influence, whether it's influencing yourself, influencing other people to get over their blocks to success, control their subconscious mind, become a relationship magnet, remove traumas, whatever, or whether it's in the field of interpersonal communication and persuasion and influence, whether I'm teaching personal injury attorneys how to make juries love them and make judges love them, or sell, up your bottom line, or have departments in a corporation communicating better. These are all parts of my passions. Marketing falls into that because it's a form of human influence. So I'm at the same time from both camps, but by and large, you're going to fall into one or the other, and they're not mutually exclusive. So my advice to the passionate enthusiast is, make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And what I mean by that is, you always hear this in the self-development and the self-help fields, is that do what you love and the money will come. No, it's not true, because they left a piece out. Do what you love, and as long as other people love it too and are willing to pay for it, the money will come. You see, most people, they get an idea for a business and they do that one thing. That's one of the problems that happens, is people get this idea for one thing and they think because they love it, everybody else will too. Be very, very careful, because there's nothing new. There's almost nothing new under the sun. Even though new shit's coming out daily, you'll almost always find out it's just another version of something we've already got. When you start generating an idea for a business, you need to do your consumer research. You need to make sure that the people that you're marketing to, that you're trying to reach, are hungry, that they're actually actively buying and paying for what you're offering, right? Don't be afraid if there's competition in the niche. That means there's money in the niche, right? Now, if it's super saturated, you may have to niche down, find a sub-niche within that you can function in and JV with, and create joint venture partners that are synergistic to build your list or whatever. But if there's no money in the niche, or if there's no competition in the niche, chances are you found an undiscovered pocket, unlikely, or other people have gone there before, didn't make any money, and got out. So don't let your passion for your niche override your business acumen. Look at the numbers. Look at what people are buying, look at where they're selling, look at how many competitors are in the niche, and have 2 or 3 other fallback niches that you can go into as well, right? What I like to tell people to do, because that's one of the things, one person comes up with one idea that they think will just overwrite everything, and that can happen. But a lot of times what I see when I'm coaching people is that they have 5 or 6 potential niches, and they're so inundated with choices they don't know where to start. And so I tell them, go back to the numbers. These are all 5 things. Let's say you have 5 things. There's 5 things that you want to do. Go do the research. Find out which one has the most potential. That becomes number 1. Second one with the most potential, number 2. And just organize it that way and do one. Just one. Get it profitable. Decide if you want to go deep into that niche or start your next niche, right? But at the end of the day, you got to balance your heart with your head. You've got to look at the numbers, right? Understand that patterns are going to tell you more about what the internet's going to do than anything else. Look at what the trends have been, how products have gone through their life cycle, and try to guesstimate where in that life cycle your niche falls or where your product is, so you know how to structure your marketing. That's a little bit more advanced stuff, but at the end of the day, that's where you need to start. Because if you haven't done the research, then you could build all these really elaborate funnels and have this really cool page that nobody's going to come to and nobody's going to buy, because either they can get it for free or there's just not enough interest in it for them to actually want to whip out their credit card and get into your funnel. Does that help?
Absolutely. So specifically, most people think of Google, we like to call them the Matrix, and SEO. Can we talk a little bit more about specifics with respect to, a lot of people, I think, get overwhelmed by these two topics, and certainly do a Google search on these topics and you're going to be even more overwhelmed. But what are some steps, and certainly we are surprised every day by some very simple things and very simple steps that people can take to essentially better plug themselves into Google and better expose their business to the quote-unquote search engines. What would steps along that train of thinking would you recommend?
Well, first of all, understand that Google was created by people. Even though it's an algorithm, or as some people like to call it, Google is Skynet, so expect the machines to take over any day. But the one thing that Google and human beings have in common is when a human being looks at another human being, what they're looking for is to see themselves reflected back to them. You've heard me say this in my books, and you've seen me do it over and over again in live demonstrations. Human beings have a checklist inside of them. It's hardwired into them, or it's firm-wired into them, I guess is a better way to say it. In NLP parlance, we would call that criteria and values. Criteria and values are the emotional triggers that cause us to do everything. Once you get beyond just the idea of basic survival, procreation, those kinds of things, you get into the realm of criteria and values, which are how we judge whether something is right and appropriate for us. Right? So it's all about not just what we get, but the way we know we're getting it. Every human being is engaging in a process known as projection, which means as I interact with you, as you interact with me, there's a little map that has a light being flashed on it that's reflecting into a mirror. And that mirror is, I'm looking at that mirror as I talk, and that mirror is projecting onto you what I'm looking for. It's a checklist. If you match my checklist, I qualify you as being more and more like me, and me like you. The more checks you get in my checklist, the more like you or like me you become, and the more I want to stick and connect with you. This is a fundamental, physiologically driven process. You can't escape it. It's how we work. Human beings create technology that inevitably mirrors and mimics the way they think and relate to the world. Google is a search engine algorithm that when it looks at your website wants to see itself. If you look at the front page of Google and you look at the links that are on the front page of Google, paid links aside, the links that come up are the ones that Google likes the best. When you create a website, keep that in mind. Structure your website based on the data Google is showing you. Now, it's getting harder and harder to do that because Google has started tailoring and customizing what you see on your search engine results. So the more unbiased a search engine result you can get, the more valid your information is going to be. That's the Google side. There's another side. There's the human side. The human side is, once again, there are things that human beings will say they want, that they say they will act on. And then there's the things that they really do. You can go to a keyword research company like WordStream or Market Samurai or some of these other SEO-based softwares, and they're going to give you clicks. They're going to give you, buying. Some will still give you consumer intent, although that's kind of gone off the wayside. But we don't really know what the human component is. And by and large, the search engines are going to give you information that is useful, but I find it actually kind of hinders my process. And so I just look at what people are clicking on in YouTube. You'll find that more often than not, the highest rated videos on YouTube wind up on the front page of Google. There's a reason, because Google wants to see itself. Google is YouTube, YouTube is Google. Even though YouTube is technically its own search engine, it is the #2 rated search engine in the world next to Google. So if you Google David Snyder, you will see massive amounts of search engine real estate, 90% of which was generated through my YouTube channel, which links back to my various websites. People follow that, and before you know it, you have all of this customer engagement. So you have to set up high-level content that engages people, that makes them happy, but is also based on their click patterns. The fastest hack I can give you to understanding click patterns and generating content that people will actually watch is go to YouTube. Take the keyword idea that you have, type it into that search engine bar. Look at what comes up. First of all, as you start to type it in, there will be an autocomplete function, and it'll show you all the relevant, based on what you're typing, all the relevant keywords. Pick one. Pick one, type it into the search engine, and look at what comes up. Now, what you get will be what Google thinks is most relevant, but that's not what we care about. What we care about is which videos have the most clicks. Which links did people actually click on? Then look at the thumbs up. How many liked it? How many didn't? Whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down doesn't really matter, because in order for them to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, they had to have actually watched the damn thing. Right? So the hack is very simple. Look at the set number of YouTube views, which means that people clicked on that link. Create content that is relevant to your site based on what you find there, but also take those videos, if they're relevant to your niche, and embed them on your website. No content that you create in terms of video should ever go right to your website first. It should always go to Google, or it should go to YouTube. So you can go to Google+, Blogger, YouTube, post it there, and then post it on your website, link it to your website, because Google is going to access Google first, and then it's going to follow itself to you. Okay? That's the more roundabout but very organic way to do these things. If you can kind of create in your own mind a click path that you want people to follow, then you can link people to where you want them to go next. But you have to have content that they're going to click on. To do that, you've got to look at what they've clicked on in the past. The fastest way, without sorting through miles and miles of keywords, is to just look at what people have clicked on in YouTube and build your search engine strategies from there.